We're all in it together. If we work together, we are so much better off because of that. And just being open to sharing, being open to partnership, because we truly can have an impact from there. We've solved crimes even before we started the information sharing by getting the right information to the right people. And they see it, they solve cases, we solve cases. Everyone else is better off because of that. So
you're listening to the Retail Crime Intelligence Podcast by ORCA, where we share actionable insights to help you reduce crime and violence in your stores.
Hey, Ed, how are you?
I am doing so well. How are you?
Good, good. We are so thrilled today to have you on our podcast just to talk through a few things related to organized retail crime and the way that you've been able to influence that in your space in law enforcement. But before we get started, for the listeners and viewers out there, just tell us about yourself, about your career journey, how you ended up working in ORC, and what your current position is.
Well, I'll start with the current position. I'm Crime Prevention for Boise Police Department. I'm also one of the privileged leaders of the Organized Retail Crime Association of Idaho. We started back in 2014, almost a decade ago. But truly, most of my life, I swear, I've been in loss prevention, ORC-related duties, stuff like that. So 17 years worked in retail, started out on the floor and worked my way into a loss prevention position, not knowing it was going to be leading me to where I am today, but found a joy with it, found a kind of a niche from there. And from there was lucky enough to jump into leadership positions. They kept me around and let me do all sorts of just crazy things. But during that time being, the majority of that was spent in Boise, Idaho, working with the Boise Police Department, developed quite a relationship with the officers and with the folks that were there helping from day to day. And so we had people coming into our stores and kind of working back and forth. And so kind of saw what partnership was, I guess, with law enforcement way back then. And then 10 years ago, happened to have a position come open in the Boise area, and my position is right now. And luckily enough, my wife talked me into applying for it on the second to last day. It was still open. And I've been here ever since then. And so I get to do so much in the community. But one of the pieces I love to still keep my hands on is just the retail piece like that of, working with our retailers on theft, on fraud, and everything else. And that's from the small local businesses to the larger major chains that we see throughout the city. So I kind of keep my passion for ORC and loss prevention and stuff kind of satisfied that way.
That's awesome. It's so crazy. I always forget that you and I have the same journey, but it's flopped. Like I started in law enforcement, then got into retail, and then you did retail and then law enforcement. But it is so cool how both overlap so beautifully, despite, I guess, our best efforts for it not to, because it seems like there's always product that we sell that people want to steal. So it works out pretty well. So just to kind of dive into like ORC in general, retail crime. So can you talk about how you feel retail crime is changing, within your position? Is there any good examples maybe that you could give us to kind of illustrate that change or like the shift that you're seeing?
Yeah, it's, it truly back way when I was in retail piece too. I know the Boise Police Department, why I'm in my position, why we have this position here is because they saw just that connection between all the folks that were going around to retail stores, stealing this, stealing that, doing everything, and to so many other crimes that, law enforcement investigates outside the retail world. And so there's always been that natural connection piece that we've tried to keep up from there. I think it evolved into, just what stores are doing about it, what we're able to do about it, how it's just grown from there. The technology piece is thrown in. I think the one kind of learning I think everyone should take just from the partnership piece is just how interconnected we could be or should be from that, because just with what we've been able to share over and over and over again, we've been able to make amazing cases for a retailer, even outside of retail with that. And I can provide examples from this week, from last week, from the week before. Right. Just this week, we sent something out that wasn't the retailer necessarily having, their loss. Today, no, maybe a fraud loss comes back through with a chargeback down the road, but knowing that it's in the retail world, retail sector, we share out bulletins just to see what we can come up with. And, another group from a law enforcement group in the state oversees the bulletin, retailer sees at the same time too, and they share us information that leads us to identifying the suspect. Not related, not the same thing they were doing back there, but they had cases on them, and they are able to share their information from us, and now we have suspects identified into crime. Now we have ways to, prosecute a case, create warrants, everything else like that. We've seen so many wins again and again and again. I think just realizing how interconnected we are, because these suspects don't care about jurisdictions. They don't care about state lines. They just care about going and creating a loss, creating a profit, doing a theft, fraud, whatever it may be.
I think what's the dynamic that hasn't changed is like, it's the same type of crime, right? Same type of product. It's just that they figure out a different way to do it, I suppose, or a different way to execute it, or they get better at perfecting the method that they use. So it's like the same underlying things, but it does change. And so it really keeps you on your toes to make sure that you're educated, right? Like if something comes up, to your point, that you're sharing the information. I can't tell you how many times I'm like, I've literally never seen this before. Have you seen this? And then normally they're like, oh yeah, we actually started seeing that in this part of the country a few months ago. So it's interesting how everything is so interconnected. And that's why, to your point, sharing the information is just so critical to get those things fixed.
Exactly. We're still have people stealing today as they did yesterday. They steal in different ways. And even with the technology piece, with how easy it is to sell a stolen item, doesn't have to be locally in Boise, Idaho. Can it be? Absolutely. But how easily could they share stuff around the country and share stuff anywhere and have an online whole marketplace for stealing that? How much easier it is for them to make a profit off, the same stuff they were stealing 10 years ago, 20 years ago from us.
People don't realize the impact that COVID really had on the online marketplace. The fact that, there was such a demand for goods and people didn't want to get out. So we saw a huge influx in rioting and theft. And then where did it all go? It went online because people weren't leaving their house. And so it literally just made it even harder to kind of get a handle on, because it was so much so quick. And it was honestly just that unexpected shift where there was the problem online, but it was just exacerbated tenfold. And that's honestly why the Inform Act is so critical right now too, because it helps us really combat those things. When you think about people who might not maybe understand the importance of collaboration between, the retailer and law enforcement, maybe they have like a very strong opinion one way or the other. How do you really, in your opinion, feel like you reframe that conversation to help people meet in the middle about how important, like you said, sharing is, collaboration, all those things? How do you think you would make a convert out of somebody if they thought that there wasn't any need to have that collaboration?
I think we both have kind of a unique perspective, being where we've been, where we've seen both sides of that. We've seen the loss prevention side, and you've, in a number of years working with the companies you have, and just see what the loss prevention folks go through day in and day out through the daily investigation, through ORC investigations. And on the same side, I've seen what we've been able to do, the past 10 years on the law enforcement side, and build these amazing cases with retailer after retailer, with partner after partner. Mm-hmm. It still kind of baffles me to a certain degree when I talk to retailers, and it's been, they can't get that connection with law enforcement because of resources, because of, just not seeing that vision of what that can take place. With that, on the same side, on the retail piece like that, of seeing, policies and stuff like that, that prevent people from sharing to the fullest from there. And so I think truly being able to show them what we've been able to do, year after year, day after day, and to build these just amazing cases, because we've had cases that, it's been one person shares one piece of information with us, and it's evolved into close to $1 million cases of theft or ORC between states and states and states. We've welcomed detectives into our department before. They've sat down, we've worked side by side, seen the ORC pieces, stuff from there. And we've tried to make at least our converts one person at a time, or as many people at a time with it. And so just being open up to sharing, I think, is a big piece, because we've had actually a story that I share quite a bit. It was from prior to my tenure with the Boise Police Department. But it all started out with one retailer investigating some frauds at the store. They did an amazing job, starting that case and putting things together. But it evolved into a much bigger case like that. They got us involved, and were able to kind of help tie in the knots and tie in the loose ends, make some knots in there, and make warrants for an arrest. And ultimately, through that investigation, it was found that one of the suspects was sexually abusing a minor. And without that retailer coming forward with that, who knows how long that could have been going on? Who knows how many victims there could have been with that? And how many cases do we see again and again, from things like that to human trafficking to everything, just because we have some great partners trying to do their job out there. And so just how many suspects are interconnected through so many crimes. And because we have great partners with great technology, with great information, we're able to truly make impactful arrests in our community and make people much safer because of it.
It just goes back to sometimes people don't understand like what's in it for them. And if you actually take the time to explain it and say, hey, look, I'm going to do all the hard work for you. I just need you to come in and kind of help us there on the back end. I think that does make a difference because everyone's busy, everyone's short-staffed, everyone has a lot going on, but just explaining to them how that partnership or how that collaboration can help them and what they can potentially get out of it, I think always makes it an easier sell. And I guess we talked about it a little bit earlier, but from your perspective, what do you think is working well from a retailer and police relationship standpoint? Like, what do you think is going exceptionally well?
Yeah, I think, and even just talking to a number of retailers, more and more retailers that are law enforcement agencies that are coming on, they're kind of realizing what's going on, seeing what's all going on at Albuquerque with how many people trying to affect change down there on a much higher level. And so I think as it's become more of a national topic, people are starting to do more about that. Law enforcement agencies, how many ORC kind of task force are we seeing in states pop up now? How many states are we seeing enact legislation to do with it? It's great to see change and stuff like that and keep it going and just trying to keep that momentum going with it. We see amazing cases from amazing partners every single day come for us. Like, we're going to get some text back and forth showing up right now, and just on a case right now that someone happened to come through Boise. Unfortunately, they made it out of Boise, but working with that retailer, working with others, we have identifications now, and that can lead to warrants, that can lead to arrests. I think one of the biggest things to share is just opening your eyes to how much retail has to offer into any case with that. Because back in your days, you helped us with great counterfeiting cases and stuff like that. We're able to make arrests with that. We had a COVID case come out of that, and just learning and finding new partners that were out there that we never had before, and turning those into multi-million-dollar cases. People, when we talked to, admitted to doing the exact same, fraudulent activity over the past decade. And only because we were able to work amongst ourselves. We have found a new retail partner that we didn't work with before. That's now an amazing resource. We found another amazing resource through an existing partner, and we're able to piece things together and bring people online. It's able to impact so many cases across the country that a lot of agencies didn't even blink at. And because we're able to collaborate, what we're able to solve is, limitless, or could be limitless, and just as we work together.
I agree. I think a lot of law enforcement folks don't understand how much technology and resource a lot of retailers have, and the different things that we actually can provide them, whether it's loyalty account information, it's fantastic CCTV, chargeback information, it could be criminal intelligence that we're using, from different platforms. It's just LPR data, facial rec. Like, there's so many resources and just technology tools that retailers have invested in because safety is of the utmost importance. And I think if law enforcement would lean in as well and say, hey, what do you have? Like, I would just love to know. But I think it's also on the retailers as well, especially with my background and yours too, to say, hey, look, like, this is what I have and I can share. Because back in the day, I feel like smaller cities or smaller places were like, oh no, we don't have an ORC problem. But to your point, what I think people are realizing is you might have a smaller ORC problem, maybe in like a Jackson, Tennessee as compared to a Dallas, Texas. But the reality is you do have ORC. And how do we really help support those folks, like what Albuquerque's doing, to say, look, if you get good legislation in place and if you have the right tools and if you're partnering together between law enforcement and retail, like, you really can, you can really affect change in a big and positive way. So I think that that's a fantastic shout. And if you had to give advice or maybe impart some wisdom on a fellow law enforcement leader to kind of rethink or reframe their mindset and approach to that retail crime and violence, what would you say to them?
Truly, and this is going back to base level, retail crime, ORC, there's just a huge community impact that goes along with it. And you can even think about it as a quality of life issue, because look at around the country where we're seeing retailers close down stores in certain areas where they have just these huge problems with shrink, huge problems with theft and ORC. And how much worse off is that community because that store is no longer there on the corner from, what could pop up in its place for the crime and whatever else, but just the whole personal impact of not being able to drive down to the most convenient store and buy baby formula, buy different things like that. And so just understanding the community impact of it, because, we've all talked about forever that people pay more in higher prices because of theft. And I think everyone gets that now. But just seeing what the lack of that store, the lack it could truly have on a community. And just for the arrest side, law enforcement side, I think we've said it again and again and again, just what with information we're able to get from retailers on so many cases that further so many more investigations that may or may not be even related to a retailer. I remember after one meeting we had with our local retailers, we shared out a picture of a person in that meeting. He's not a very nice guy, to say the least. Mm-hmm. We knew he had some retail connections, and the marshal service, everyone else was out looking for him. So let's throw it out to the retailers and see what they could come up with. After the meeting, within an hour, a few of us went out to lunch. We got a call as we're ordering by one retailer at our meeting. Oh yeah, he just walked into my store. He's wearing this, and this. And so we were able to grab resources that were all way over there trying to explore some of the lead to the one retail location and made an arrest because we had a great partner there that we gave the right information to, and they acted upon that. And just realizing how many others we have in every single retail location, whether it's the individual store detective or higher up the chain from the ORC investigators to the regional managers, everything else like that, that have the ability for us to help make those impacts in a community. Because that one arrest and that person being off the street, that person's not offending anymore at that time. They're not out victimizing other people. And so I don't think we just truly appreciate a lot of times the impact that can have on a community.
Yeah. Because, criminals shop just like everybody else, right? You gotta go shop and get your food and your clothes and all those things. And even talking about the impact on the community, it's like the phantom economy too, right? Like you're missing lost tax revenue and all these things. And that impacts cities tremendously around paying for police and for fire and doing community programs, schools, all of that. It's just this tremendous missed tax revenue too, if it's stolen and it's not sold. And that also impacts communities. So it's crazy how interwoven everything is and how you can make those connections for that reason. It's just a good way to explain to people why all of this is so relevant.
We are all connected through all of these. And we've always tried to do what is, right for our community. Yeah. And it really comes down to that, just doing the right thing. And the right thing is to work these partnerships, work together on these crimes and community issues. And because we're able to work together, we were able to achieve so much better as a community.
It really is. On the flip side of that, if you were going to kind of give like the same framework or the same advice to that LP leader, what advice would you give them to rethink their approach as well?
And I've actually told many LP leaders this, is don't be afraid to reach out to us as soon as you can in the investigation. I've seen some amazing cases put together and just been amazed by what the level of detail, the level of accuracy, just the wealth of information they able to provide to us with a great big bow on top of it. At least what we try to put is don't be afraid to reach out to us as soon as possible and see what else we could help with from there, because I feel bad when I see this cases come across us and they've been doing this for the past 2-3 months, and it frustrates me that we couldn't have helped them sooner, made that arrest sooner, stopped those losses sooner with that. And also kind of just have people consider what they're able to share when they're able to share it and stuff from there, because we know what such great information we've had. We've been able to make fraud arrests. We've been able to make this, that. We've been able to connect the information we get, whether it's CCTV or, customer detail from other cases into these amazing investigations. And just being aware of what their ability to share can impact us for arrests, for community, for everything else from there, and just be open to trying to share with us as well.
Yeah, I think sometimes the misconception is, law enforcement is too busy, right? Or they've got too much going on. But the sooner you loop y'all in, the better, because that way maybe you can allocate resources or you can dedicate a team or a detective to looking at that, help out with surveillance, help with whatever it might be. So I actually think that that's a really good call because everyone's busy, everyone's stretched thin. But if you're able to work together sooner than later, it really would make a difference.
I sense a theme with this with the interview here, just the whole collaboration piece, and it's worked again. It's our only way forward with so many things, so many issues going on. Truly.
Yeah, that's why the ORCAs are so important. That's why intelligence meetings are important. That's why sharing whatever you can as quickly as possible is important because everything is just so interconnected. And as well as I do, if they're hitting one retailer, they're going to be hitting every retailer because they normally don't discriminate from that standpoint. So yeah, it's very, very important to make sure that we're talking through that and sharing that info.
And that's why it's great to have so many connections across the board, have so many resources across the board. Like I said, even with the ORCA piece like that, how easily could we call up and, talk to someone in New Mexico, in Arizona, in across the country. And at the same time, they're seeing the information. We've had people identified in Boise, Idaho by people on the East Coast because they were actively engaged and had a passion for this type of things. And we were able to make arrests. We're able to identify suspects because we're a community in this together. So.
It's interesting, too, because I feel as though nowadays more of these groups are traveling further and longer distances where I would say, maybe 10 years ago, it wasn't the case. They kind of stayed close to home or they would only drive maybe 2 to 5 hours outside. But now we see them literally moving across the entire country up, the East Coast, whatever it might be. And so it is that important to make sure that you're checking with the ORCAs and looking and using your contacts because it's so much broader and bigger and deeper than it used to be. It's way more organized, I feel, globally than what it used to be. And it's just almost the magnitude of it. It's crazy how much it's gotten to be so organized in most of these areas, for sure.
We had a recent case with cell phone stores were hit locally. Detectives had nothing to go with it. And so I let them know, hey, I can at least get some more eyes, if nothing else, on your information. And so we blasted it out there as a bulletin. And the next day we got contacted by law enforcement in Oklahoma who had the exact same case and the exact same people we had who knew they got arrested in Missouri just shortly after that. And so we have information right there. We put out in a retail meeting, we put out the information, and one of our partners that just happens to be an investigator from California in retail was, zoomed into the meeting. And so they're like, we need to talk to you afterwards. Had a great conversation with them. And they're like, this group's been hitting us again and again and again up and down, the I-5 corridor. And they had case after case after case on them. And even after the fact, once we started compiling information together, I saw this group in, alerts from the same group in Pennsylvania where they were traveling everywhere on that. But just one bulletin solved our case, solved many cases up and throughout California like that. And so
nothing like putting a hold on someone when they are already waiting, thinking that they're going to be able to get out. And you're like, nope, sorry, you're actually headed someplace else now.
Absolutely. And we're happy to have them come here and stay in Boise a little bit longer than they want to.
I'm sure everyone would appreciate if they stayed in Boise and didn't actually get out and go crazy. All right. So last question for you. I feel like we're just pros now at this. So beyond law enforcement and retail, what do you think different government administrations should be doing to address the epidemic that we've got going on with retail theft?
What I like to see now is what we're seeing is how many people are getting kind of the official ORC laws on the book, kind of defining this from your, traditional petty thefts, from your traditional, kid walking into the store and stealing this item, stuff from there, actually seeing it for what it truly is. I think that's amazing because you're allowing retailers to have more tools and resources. You're having law enforcement, those tools to handle it appropriately, whether it's, the legislation and you're enacting the laws or legislation and you're putting together a task force. You're creating the support that we've never really had in the past for this. And so just addressing that, because on the law enforcement side, we love to have that tool. In years past, we saw some of those tools and abilities taken away from us and made us have to address things in different ways, like we always will. We always try to figure out a way to make that impact, make that arrest, make that change. But now it's so great to see it swinging the other way, and so maybe be pro trying to enact change on this, whether it's an informed act, whether it's looking at further what we can do further on there, from just the online sales to being able to tackle these groups, tackle these international groups, and handling like it truly is organized retail crime.
Agree. I think more people are getting more jazzed about it because it is such a big thing, and they know that if they make a change that it'll impact them positively, and they don't want their cities to turn into some of these areas where it's just so out of control. Like you said, that stores are closing or there's major safety issues or whatever that might be. So I think that is fantastic perspective for sure. Is there anything that you want to share with us, Ed? Anything else that maybe I didn't ask you that you think is relevant or that you just want to share with the group?
I think I've talked about information sharing for the past how much long with you with that piece, but I think just bottom line, I've said this, we're all in it together. If we work together, we are so much better off because of that. And just being open to sharing, being open to partnership, because we truly can have an impact from there. We've solved crimes even before we started the information sharing by getting the right information to the right people. And they see it, they solve cases, we solve cases. Everyone else is better off because of that. So
I would agree. I'll tell you, I know that I value you tremendously just because previous retailer we met and were able to close a really significant case and help you. But I think the cool thing is that just goes to show that these relationships last forever, because that was maybe 4 years ago. And we still talk, we still share information. Obviously, I've moved over to ORCA, but it's just been such a cool journey even to see that those relationships still last. And I think that is a cool part of it too, that people can take away. It's not like you reach out one time and then you never talk again. It just opens up this almost instantaneous relationship where you build trust quickly because you know that you're counting on each other, but you actually are able to achieve so much more through those relationships. And how many times do you call and you're like, Ed, I'm working so-and-so. Do you know a person in wherever that might be? And you're like, yes, or no, but let me find someone because I'm sure that we can. So it just goes so much deeper than just that one case or that one bolo or that one thing. It's just actually a really, I think, a sweet thing that you're able to get to know people and continue to work these cases and continue to tackle this head on. Absolutely.
It's just the resources around the country. Like you said, if I need to stop a package in Florida right now, I have at least 3 people I could call to assist with that or get in touch with the right person. Or I need to identify this group. Hey, there's this one person I can email that's even international that can help with this. And so there's so many resources out there, and just being able to meet through cases, through meetings, through conferences, it's helps us build that family, those relationships that we do continue to use again and again and again, because same cases for all of us, same suspects for all of us so many times. And so
it never fails. I was standing there talking to a detective, and they were asking me about a case that I actually am quite familiar with one specific retailer. The retailer was here. I asked the retailer to come to the booth. No joke, met each other. This detective has cell phone records for 6 months that places these suspects all up and down the East Coast. They were on their phones together, identified 2 brand new suspects. The retailer calls their team. They're like, okay, go on and set up a call for next week. And there we are, just from one simple conversation. So you're 100% right. It's just so important to talk. Like, what's the worst that could happen, right? Like, they say, no, I don't have that case, or no, I don't know that person, but at least you tried, which is all we're trying to do, is take care of these broader scale cases for sure.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you today, Ed, for your time. It was so nice to see you and catch up, and we look forward to chatting with you soon.
Sounds good. See you, Elena.
Thank you for listening to the Retail Crime Intelligence Podcast by ORCA. Don't forget to follow and subscribe on your favorite podcast app.